Welcome, this is Glasgow Rangers Nation. This is not actually live, guys. It is recorded, so you can still chat in the live chat. Feel free to have a good chat, share points, debate the situation, debate what's going on at Rangers, debate all the latest news. Sorry about the lack of lives recently. Been working an awful lot, so had very little time to actually sit down and work. Looking forward, hopefully, one day to going full time at this. Just need to get the views up even more. Need to get somewhere close to CJ Novo or even Dan at RFC News' numbers, if that is ever gonna happen. So look, we've got a bit to talk about in this video podcast, premiere, whatever you want to call it. We're going to talk a little bit about what Scott Wright has been saying over his decision to leave Rangers and why he said it was a no-brainer. Also a little bit about Robin Propper, who's been coming in for some criticism recently over his form, particularly in that Celtic game at the weekend. We're also going to talk a little bit of investment news. The constant rumours going around about investment into Rangers, American investors. What's the investment truth? What's the story behind that? And what do we really need if we're not going to become? And look, I heard, I've heard people criticising something the Rabble said the other day. And look, I think the Rabble was spot on with what they said. Rangers are in danger of becoming Espanyol to Celtic's Barcelona. We are in danger of becoming Dortmund to their Bayern Munich. We are in danger of becoming the poor relation in the city of Glasgow due to the massive, huge financial mismanagement and general mismanagement of the club by this board that are an absolute blight on our club. I am firmly of the opinion, and no one's going to change that opinion, that the sooner John Bennett and the Park family are gone from this club, as soon as they stop being a curse and a virus within our club, the better for Rangers. We're also going to talk some free agents as well. Clement did talk, didn't he, a little bit about having free agents and signing free agents. But two of the top CDMs, Yatenko, the Ukrainian, and Alzate, the Colombian from Brighton, have both now departed their clubs and have signed for new clubs. Rangers, well, I wouldn't say missing out. I mean, missing out in terms of the fact that, well, were we even in for them? But if we weren't in for them, you've got to kind of question, why were we not in for these two top players? Given the fact they were both absolutely, completely not free, barring wages and a signing on fee. So let's start off by talking a little bit of that investment news. Now, there's been a lot of talk, hasn't there, about Americans buying the club. And there's been some other podcasts that have said, oh, well, that's not good news, is it? When have Americans ever been good for a football club? Which I think is an absolutely ridiculous line to come out. I think anyone who sits there and says, that all American investment into football is bad news, I think that's just absolutely ludicrous. Yes, there are examples of bad investment, but just because they're American doesn't make them bad investors. We've got Scottish guys owning the club now, and they're absolutely shite. So I mean, ask Arsenal fans: is Stan Kroenke bad for their team? Arsenal consistently challenging for the Premier League, consistently in the Champions League. Got a good chance of actually winning the Premier League this season. Stan Kroenke's spent vast sums of money on that team. And I know that English football is very different to Scottish football in the fact that, obviously English football is by far a more attractive prospect to an investor because of the EPL money. At Liverpool, FSG, I know a lot of Liverpool fans don't particularly like FSG, but FSG have done a very good job in running Liverpool. They've won the Champions League under FSG. They've won their first Premier League title under FSG. They've signed some very good players under FSG. They've had one of the best managers ever in world football in Jurgen Klopp. They seem to have got another one in Arne Slot. So they seem to be doing a very good job. And certainly, if you look in America at the way FSG run their American sports franchises, the Boston Red Sox and the Pittsburgh Penguins, they are doing an exceptional job out there too. So that is good. Birmingham City, owned by Knighthead as well. Tom Wagner and that evil so-and-so Tom Brady. They are obviously investing vast sums of money in Birmingham City. Yes, Birmingham are League One at the moment, but there is a huge push to get them back and eventually up into the Premier League. So there is, examples of very good American ownership. Now, the figure that has been quoted for Rangers is £150 million. That would be for a total takeover. Now, I know some of the talk in the media has been around investment and getting new investors involved into the club. I'll be honest with you, I don't see just getting new investors into the club as being the answer. I think that actually would not help Rangers in the slightest, because that would obviously involve probably still involvement from John Bennett, probably still involvement from the Park family. And, if you're going to cure a problem, if you're going to stop an issue, you've got to get rid of the cause of the issue, the cause of the problem. And for me, the big cause of the problem at Rangers is John Bennett and the Park family. If you look at how this club has been run over the last 12 years, or, it's more so since 55, that this club has been so badly mismanaged and badly run. The fact that post 55, we were in a position where we could have gone on to be, the Premier Force in Scotland, accelerated as Celtic are doing now. So, our City rivals have accelerated, have moved away, have developed and have got better, this season in terms of their investment, and moving the club forward. They've got a transfer model that clearly works. They sell players for an awful lot of money. They then bring in new players for an awful lot of money. I mean, they've spent like 34 million this summer, but brought in 38 million, meaning they made a £4 million profit while still maintaining a squad that is vastly superior to ours. So, this is the way forward. And the club, since 55, have failed to back their managers, have failed to build on that. Steven Gerrard was not backed properly. Post 55, he was not given the opportunity to bring in players who, would have taken this club to the next level, would have taken this club on to compete in Europe, to, probably go on and win more trophies. People talk about, well, Joe Gerrard only won one trophy. Well, yes, but I think that, he still won the league title. He won that league title undefeated. And that was the launching point, wasn't it? That was the end point of the kind of rebuild of the team. From that point on, that should have been the launch point to then go on and win domestic trebles, go on and compete in Europe, and going to become a dominant force again within the Scottish game and also to some extent within Europe. So, board have to carry a lot of blame there. And the Park family and Stuart Robertson, obviously, that were involved, Ross Wilson, running the club at that point, carry, the blame for making some exceptionally bad decisions. Led obviously to Gerrard leaving. Involved in that as well. I think it's worth remembering that John Bennett was the vice chair at that time. So John Bennett was part of that decision-making process. So he equally carries the can for that. He is not absolved from blame, and he can sit all he wants, and talk to the media every 2.5 years and talk about best in class, but none of us are swallowing his bullshit. So the situation is very much that this club is very badly run by the board. It is very badly run in terms of, the whole business organisation. The fact we still don't have a CEO is an absolute joke. Someone as a CEO who can run this football club. I mean, I spoke on the video this morning, didn't I, about the fact that the problem as well for Rangers CEOs, I think, as well over the last, few years has been the fact that they're constantly been interfered with by the board. I don't mean interfered with in the same way that Celtic interfere with people. I mean, interfere with in the way that they do their job. CEO should be left to get on with his job. He shouldn't have to constantly, go kowtowing to the board, cap in hand to the board. He should be allowed to run the football club. That is what he's there for. The board there are merely there as a financial backer and also as an advisory capacity. The CEO is trusted as being the leader of the business, the man who runs the company, the man who takes responsibility. And, he needs obviously a remit to work within, but once he's working within that remit, he needs to be left the hell alone by a board that, as Graham Souness told us, doesn't understand football. Graham Souness said, and look, Graham is not always right on everything, but I think, not given the fact that he is not the only person saying this. Simon Jordan has also said very similar to this, and I know Simon Jordan can be a bit of an idiot at times, but you've got to respect him as a businessman. He said as well that the Rangers board seem to lack any football intelligence, and I think he's not the only one. There was a number of people, ex-players, ex-coaching staff, ex-people who have been involved with Rangers who all say that John Bennett and his cronies have absolutely zero football knowledge between them, and they're not football people. So, I think for me, the investment is something we do need. Now, we do need new investment, but I don't think it needs to be just investment into the club in terms of someone buys into the club and runs the club as part of a board with the very useless John Caveat Bennett and the blight that is Graham and Douglas Park. For me, the Park family should be got rid of 100% from the club. They are an absolute curse on this club. Douglas Park, I know, is gone now, but his son still sits in his tower of power over the club and should not be anywhere near our club. That man is an absolute blight. John Caveat Bennett, the man who every time he opens his mouth, things get worse and talks a whole load of bollocks. He needs to be gone as well. I think, the decision-making processes have shown that they are quite clearly not fit to run this club. So any investment for me needs to be in the process of a full takeover. Now, finding investors obviously is the hard thing, and there's been multiple rumors about American investors, about different companies looking at them. Obviously, there was the Kyle Fox deal that collapsed, and that was right, because Kyle Fox, the money that she had backing her was not actually her own money. It was all hedge funds, investor funds. It was not actually any money from her. She was merely the kind of face of a hedge fund that wanted to get involved with the club, and that can never be a good thing. But it's finding investors that are genuinely interested in coming in to invest in the club and to build the club to be one of the major European forces. Now, an American investment expert was talking about the investment into Scottish football, and he talked about the difficulty of investing into Scottish football because of the fact that Scotland is basically we only have Celtic and Rangers, who are competitive. We don't have a domestic product that sells well. We don't have a domestic product that draws in masses of revenue. That the revenue that Scottish clubs draw in is very much dependent on qualifying for European competition. So he talked about the fact that Rangers were in a position where we need to be playing Champions League, minimum every season to be attracting the amount of money that would attract foreign investors into the club, which obviously in itself presents a problem. It's a vicious circle. If you can't get the players in to get you into position to get into the Champions League, then you can't qualify for the Champions League. You can't get the money, etc., etc. But, I think the fact that there are rumours that there are people within the board that are now interested in selling their shares, I think if we can get someone to come in who is an investor, whether that be an American investor or a European investor or an Arab investor or any sort of, an Asian investor, to come in and actually buy the club and buy a controlling share in the club, that's got to be for the best. What we need, and I think, Martin from the Rabble was right on this, unless we get someone who is willing to invest, someone who is willing to, show that they're a football person and put a football person into place to run this club, the league title, we can kiss it goodbye for the next 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and we will become Espanyol, we will become Borussia Dortmund, while Celtic continue to become Bayern Munich or to become Barcelona, Real Madrid. The situation is that we are massively financially behind them. They are massively financially ahead of us, and that gap is only going to continue to grow with the present board and also the present situation with European football. Celtic have owners that are very rich. We do not. Celtic play Champions League football every year and get them the monies from that. Rangers get stuck in the our level competition, which is an absolute load of bullshit. And I think, like I've said on numerous occasions, when fans come out and say, "Oh, it's our level," it makes me actually want to throw up. For me, Europe at this moment in time is not about competing. Europe is about getting money into the club, which is badly needed. And that's why we need Champions League football. And I think, realistically, you look at the Europa League this season and we've got zero chance of winning it. Manchester United, Tottenham, those teams they're all far more capable than we are of winning this Champions League, winning this Europa League, sorry. So for me, we need to get some investment. We need to find people who are willing to run this club and actually take over the club and get rid of Bennett and get rid of the Park family. If we don't, then I honestly can see us becoming the new Espanyol in Scottish football, the new Borussia Dortmund, or the new Atletico Madrid to Real Madrid. Perhaps a more realistic comparison there. Atletico is still a big team that occasionally win the league, whereas Real obviously dominate virtually everything. So I think that's where we're up to. And like I said, whether it's American investment, Asian investment, wherever it's from, we need investment, but investment that takes over the club, not that just runs the club alongside the useless Park family and the utterly useless John Bennett. Let me know what you think, guys. Obviously in live chat, we obviously read back over this once I get home from work tonight. Right, let's move it along a little bit from that depressing start about investment and the fact that John Bennett couldn't run a bath, and the Park family are about as much use as a chocolate teapot. Right, so we talk about someone who left the club very recently. That's Scott Wright. Now, obviously, Scott was someone who, did get an awful lot of criticism, didn't he? I mean, let's face it. I mean, nice lad, hard worker. Would try hard. Just didn't have the talent, did he? Really, I don't think, to be a success at Rangers. But he's talked about the fact that he talked to the Birmingham Evening Mail. He talked about the fact that it was a no-brainer to join Birmingham City this transfer window, and he said it's down to the project that was presented to him by Knighthead, who are the guys who own Birmingham City. I mean, Birmingham has spent an absolute fortune this summer. I think they brought in between 16 and 17 players, including paying £9.5 million for a striker. This is a League One club now, paying £9.5 million. I think it was for Jay Stansfield, which is just, incredible that clubs in the English First Division are paying, £9.5 million for a centre forward, and we're struggling to rub together 1.6 or 2 million pounds for a striker. You know, I think for some people looking in externally, it seems a bit bizarre, doesn't it? A guy who started in the Champions League is now down in League One. But Wright, you know, said that I was getting game time at Rangers, certainly, but I first felt like it was time for a new challenge. Once I'd spoken to them, it was a no-brainer. Coming and being part of this project and this journey was something that really interested me. I signed on the Friday and it came up on the Tuesday or Wednesday, so it was really moved at a fast rate. But after having conversations with my family and my wife, we thought it was going to be the right step for me. So, you know, I think obviously, you know, we wish Scotty all the best. You know, we wish him, you know, every success. You know, there's no ill feeling towards the lad. Like I said, I don't think he ever really lived up to his promise at Rangers. And I hope that he goes on to have a very successful career at Birmingham City. But it's, you know, it's obvious to see that he saw the Birmingham project and what was going on at Birmingham has been a better option than Rangers, which has in itself a little bit of a worrying overtone, doesn't it? You know, the fact that he sees a League One club in England as a better bet than Rangers, one of the biggest clubs in European football. You know, perhaps a bit of an insight into the mismanagement and the way the club is currently being run, a club that I think really does need a modernisation from top to bottom. You know, not for a minute that I'm going to sit here and say that Scott Wright should have been kept, because I think it was the right move for the club to move him on. And like I said, I do wish him every success at Birmingham City. I hope he goes on to be a great success for Birmingham City. I hope they get promoted this season. You know, I've got a lot of time for Birmingham fans. I've got a good mate who's a Birmingham fan, and yeah, they're a top bunch. But it's interesting, isn't it, that Scott saw Birmingham as a more exciting project than what is, you know, available at Rangers at this moment in time. You know, the fact that he was getting game time, the fact that he was clearly part of Clement's plans, because the fact he was continually used. It's interesting, isn't it, that he'd rather go and take his chances away from the club rather than stay. Like I said, I'm not saying that he should. You're saying that Scott Wright should stay? No, I'm not saying that Scott Wright should have been kept. What I'm saying is, it's just interesting to see that he sees that Birmingham is a more exciting project than Rangers at this moment in time. I think it's quite telling. I think is the key word we need there. Quite telling, guys. Let me know what you think. You know, is this a reflection of where we are as a club now, that the English League One sides are becoming more attractive propositions than Rangers? You know, is it because of, you know, the manager? Is it because of the management of the club? Is it because of the board? Is it because of the caliber of the playing squad? You know, what is it down to? Why are we losing out in battles to English Championship clubs and to League One? Or is it just purely down to money? Is that it at the end of the day? Because, you know, for some footballers, and I know this is a very small bunch, it isn't all about money, is it? I mean, you look at Jack Butland, who could have stayed at Palace or stayed at Man United and got a lot more money he gets at Rangers, but decided to come and play and to compete and to take first team football, didn't he, when he joined last year? So, guys, let me know what you think about that one. Right, let's move it along a little bit. So we will talk about Robin Proper and what where we're up to with him and the situation with him. But let's touch on some free transfers. So, right, you know, Philippe Clement was asked directly at his press conference before the Celtic game, you know, were Rangers looking at the free agent market? You know, was this something they were considering? And he said that, you know, it was obviously being looked at. You know, and there was a number of players. We did a video a little while back, didn't we, about, you know, the players that were free agents that were still out there, that were available. I spoke about realistic and non-realistic targets. I spoke about people who were on that free agent list that, you know, realistically for Rangers are just not even in our price bracket. The Anthony Martials, the Memphis Depays of this world, who would cost, you know, masses of wages that we can't afford to pay, and huge signing on fees that we probably can't afford to pay. And, you know, you've got the whole issue, I suppose, of, you know, Anthony Martial being attracted to come and play in the Scottish Premier League. I think, you know, would be very, very, very much a hard sell to do, even for the best salesman in the world. Now, two players that were on that list that were kind of realistic options, I thought, for Rangers in terms of, number one, the position they played, and number two, the fact that they were, of course, free, apart from, of course, a signing on fee and wages. I mean, so let's face it, nothing is free. But then again, in life, is anything free? You've got to pay for everything in life, I think. So the first one, obviously, is a player that was linked with Rangers last summer. Sorry, it was last summer. Was it January? No, it was January, I think. It was Steven Alzate from Brighton. But obviously, that was an interest that was never followed through on. Now, Brighton released Alzate at the end of this past season, which meant, of course, that Alzate, alleged, I don't know if you've got to use the word alleged here, previous Rangers target was available for a free transfer. Like I said, nothing in this life is ever free. It is, of course, based on a signing on fee and based on wages. Now, Alzate as a player would have definitely fitted into the what the midfield positions that we needed. We do need to strengthen that midfield. I think, we are missing a 6, and Alzate can play in that 6 role. He's only 25 years old, so he's still very much in the peak of his career. He's a centre midfielder, yes, but he can play defensive midfield. He can also play as an attacking midfielder as well. So he's very much a hybrid modern midfielder. 6 foot. Market value is around €4 million at the moment. So you're putting money into something for nothing that you can then hopefully, give it a couple of seasons, decent seasons, or at least a decent season, and you can get some decent money for the guy. And can fit into this trading model. He's a guy with over 170 appearances in a range of different competitions. He's played 43 Premier League games, 44 Belgian Pro League games. He's played in League 2. He's played in the Premier League 2. He's played in the FA Cup, the EFL Cup. He's played in the playoffs in England. He's played, a number of different competitions. He's played over 11,000 minutes of first team. A guy who comes with experience. He's a guy who would bring experience to the party, which is all positive news about Alzate. But this was, like I said, this was someone that Rangers were probably interested in. This was a rumor that was doing the rounds. Like I said, the end of last year. Now he's also got 7 cups for Colombia as well. So this is a international footballer. Perhaps even a friend for Oscar Cortez. But it appears that Alzate is on his way to Hull City in the English Championship. Yes, Hull seemingly looking at Rangers target lists. Obviously, they sent Puerta, they signed Zambrano, and now they've signed Alzate, all supposed targets for Rangers. So this is another one we've missed out on, which of course, asks a couple of questions for me. One, were we in for him? And if we weren't in for him, why were we not in for him? 2, are we really looking at this free agent market, or was that just something that was said to placate the fans and to placate the media and keep everybody quiet for a bit? That is for me a big question, but I think this is definitely a miss by Rangers. The fact that, like I said, he's only joined Hull City. I mean, no disrespect to Hull City or the English Championship, but, Rangers have far more to offer than any English Championship side. Obviously we've got the attraction of playing at Ibrox in front of over 50,000 people. You've got European football, also, and technically still competing for trophies. So look, all more options to sell a club than Hull City have, who realistically are perhaps looking at trying to sneak into the playoffs this year in the EFL Championship. So for me, this is one we've definitely missed out on. Now, the other one that has come up was, obviously, as we know, that Girondins de Bordeaux went bust. They went out of business. Which is sad. I mean, it's sad to see, as we know ourselves, from 2012, it's sad to see any professional club go out of business. It really is. But Ignatenko, Danilo Ignatenko, was a free agent. He was a player who obviously had his contract cancelled after Bordeaux went bankrupt. He is a player who can play as a defensive midfielder, play as a centre midfielder, very technically good on the ball, very, very gifted and natural talent. A guy who's got a vast CV of experience, played for Ferencváros, played for Shakhtar Donetsk, played for Dnipro, played for Bordeaux. 27 years old, so still, a bit of room for development there. A guy who had, a reasonably high market value at one point as well. So, this is a guy who, it would have been a decent person to look at, and again on a free transfer, and again someone who could have come in and done a job for Rangers. Someone I know that a few of you had suggested in the past on live chats as a player that Rangers should be taking time to look at, Ignatenko. But he has now joined Slovan Bratislava of the Slovak league. I think they're Slovakian. So again, it's another one we've missed out on. Now, it's worrying that these free agents seem to be going at this point in time, and some of these more realistic targets for Rangers. I think that's the way we look at this. That Hull City, Slovan Bratislava, no bigger teams than Rangers. Teams that Rangers could easily compete with to get players in. So it is concerning to some degree that number one, did we miss out on these players? Number two, were we even in for them? If we weren't in for them, the question has to be asked why we weren't in for these players. These are talented footballers. These are guys who've done it, in a number of levels, that have got experience, which is something else that we lack. Leadership skills, again, something else that we lack. We as a team, I think, looking at Sunday, massively lacked any leadership on that park. There were no leaders on that park on Sunday. Certainly our captain, who is just absolutely useless, is not a leader. We've got a whole team that just lack any sort of leadership. And, these more experienced players like Ignatenko, like Alzate, could have come in, I think, and really help the squad develop and get better. So it's concerning, isn't it, that these free agents are going and we're not addressing the needs that we have as a squad. And I really hope that Niels Koppen, the football board, are looking at these free agents and actually evaluating some of these free agents, because this squad we currently have is nowhere near good enough in any way, shape or form to compete with Celtic. Right, so Robin Proper has come in for a lot of criticism over the last few days after his performance on Sunday. I've heard sayings like rabbit caught in the headlights, just backed off Kyogo for that goal, let players run across him, just looked wholly lost. Obviously, he is still settling into Scottish football, and it's a big difference from Dutch football. We know that. We know that playing in the Eredivisie is very different to playing in Scotland. Certainly, we've seen from Sam Lammers, how Sam Lammers has been, been sort of very successful in Holland, yet was an utter disaster here in Scotland. Now, Twente fans and Twente people have been talking about the fact that Proper left, and they've talked about the fact that for them it's been a massive loss, that for them it's been a player they didn't want to lose. Apparently, in the early days, Twente refused to take any of Rangers' phone calls about Robin Proper. They were so set on keeping their captain. A player that Rangers obviously were linked with as well, Mies Hilgers, has had to step up into play in Proper's place and has not done anywhere near as well as Proper did, apparently, in the Dutch league. Last season, only PSV and Feyenoord had better defensive records than FC Twente, whereas Twente this year have got one of the worst defensive records without Proper. So we can see the underlying importance, number one, of his leadership to FC Twente and also his defensive ability to FC Twente. So I think there is a kind of justification in there somewhere for Rangers signing Proper, even though perhaps he has not made the best of starts to his time at Rangers. It's going to take time for him to settle into actually playing Scottish football, adapting to Scottish football, adapting to the conditions. And I think, as we saw on Sunday when he went across to check on a Celtic player that was lying down, nobody told him at any point, no, we don't do that here. Just leave them. They're our rivals. Leave them alone. Walk away. Because there's no leadership on this team whatsoever. So for me, Proper, I think will take time to come good. Will take time to develop. And it's interesting, isn't it, that he is being so missed by Twente. And I think that is something we've got to take heart from, that they are clearly missing him, that he clearly was a fundamental part of their team and he was a big difference to their team. Arnold Brugging, who is the club's technical director, did admit that in an interview that he said that they had refused to take phone calls and said it was extremely unfortunate that Twente had to sell him and they didn't want to. Dutch football analysts have said as well that Twente don't look anywhere near as solid or anywhere near as good without Robin Proper. The manager, Joseph Oosteng, has talked about, his team missing Proper defensively. It is just, I think, like I say, it's encouraging that they talk about the fact that they miss their leader, they miss their defensive bulwark, they miss a guy who, was a fundamental part of their team. Now, what we need to do now as a football club is take that and we need to work with that. And we need to try and get Robin Proper back to somewhere around that ability for Rangers, to get him, doing what he did for Twente, for being that leader on the park, for the powerful headers, for the tackles, for the leadership, the organisation, the communication at the back. Now, is that leadership been stifled by the fact he's not the captain at Rangers and, we've got a captain who isn't fit for purpose? Is that part of the reason why? I don't know, because for me, you've got to have leaders all over the park, and your leader is not just your captain. Every team, every great team has a series of leaders. So, I think Robin Proper's got to step up from that aspect. The fact that he gets injured as well has been slightly concerning. Obviously, he's had 2 injuries since coming to the club, which again is a concern. Is this another injury-prone player we've managed to somehow acquire? But, Proper, I think we'll need some time. We'll need time to get better. Maybe as we come through October, November, we might start to see the best of him. And the fact that, this was a move that was kind of very quickly that went through could be sort of one of the factors that is kind of leading to his lack of gelling with the team at this point. Obviously he's got to try and stay fit, which would be a major benefit to the team. But for me, Proper could be part of a future defensive strength for Rangers. We've got Casanvirjo, who we hope that he comes through and is impressive. He can play right back, centre back. We've got Big Leon, who I think should be club captain. So I think if we can form some sort of defensive partnership with Balogun and Proper, or even Casanvirjo and Proper, then we've got to look at something different defensively, because what we're doing at the moment isn't working. There is obviously bomb scare Tav at right back. Hefte is very good going forward, not so great defensively. Ridvan is injury prone. So there is that kind of, need to still work on this back four. There's the uncertainty as well that's created by Jack Butland's drop off in form. So we do need to look at kind of what we do with this defense and how we get some solidity back into it and how we get some stability back into it. Maybe that is down to some movements around, some players coming in, some players going out, and letting Robin Proper take more of that leadership role at the back. Guys, let me know what you think. Let me know what you think. Look, we're obviously in the international break, one of the most boring times in football when international teams play. My feelings on international football, very, very dull, not as good as club football. Obviously when we come back, it will be Dundee United, which will be a tough game at Tannadice. Tannadice never an easy place to go, and given how they've started the season, the fact I think they're above us in the league at the moment as well, which is rather concerning. And like I think I said on the video the other week, or the other day, I think Monday, the league has somewhat of a 1980s look about it, doesn't it, with Aberdeen and Dundee United near the top, the days of Fergie and McLean. Very strange flashbacks, but we do need to somehow try to do something to return this club back to where it belongs, back at the top of Scottish football. And like I said, investment has to be new ownership, does not have to be should not be under any circumstances just investment, with Bennett and the Park family still involved. They've got to go. And I think we need obviously to try and find some ways to supplement this squad now, whether that is from the youth team, looking at the likes of Bailey Rice, who I argue that they should be playing, Cole McKinnon, Bobby Fraser, Zach Lovelace, Paul Uncio, who looks very impressive, Archie Stevens, Leighton Grant, Finley Curtis, Edie, all those very talented players that we've got in the youth team, whether they need more of a role in this team to give them an opportunity to play and show the heart, the fight and the bottle they've no doubt got to actually come and play for the team. And maybe look at that free agent market as well. Guys, I'd love to know your thoughts. Let me know your thoughts. Obviously, drop me a comment in the live chat. Drop me a comment as well on the video afterwards, guys. Remember, if you want to help the channel, watch the content is the primary way you help. Second thing, help, hit the subscribe button. Third thing, like the video, comment on the video. All of them help build the video. And if you want to help even more, super thanks. Obviously, you can donate some money to the channel or become a channel member. Well, that's it, guys. That's the thing. Like I said, I'm sorry this wasn't live, but like I said, due to work commitments, I'm having real issues with going live. So thank you so much for your continued support. It really does mean the world, guys. I'm hoping that one day this will be the job, the one and only job, if we can get obviously the views up and the subscriptions up some more. Thank you for watching Glasgow Rangers Nation, guys. As always, please remember a couple of things for me. One, smash the like on the way out. And two, remember always, we are the people.